Peace and greetings, everyone. Welcome to True Health Live. This is episode 17. We have been moving. It's very hard to believe we're like 17 episodes. So, I am your host, THL, joined by my co host, Precious Stepney, and Anushka Gopilal. Say hey, ladies.
Hi.
Reminds, reminds me of that movie. You ever seen Grown Ups with
Hello.
Chris Rock? Hey, ladies, I'm supposed to you. All right. So today we are talking about, we're still in our maternal health series for the summer. And today we are focused on postpartum experiences. So whether that be postpartum depression, experiences with lactation, mental health issues, um, your menses returning post baby. We're going to be talking about all of that. We did invite viewers to come in and share their postpartum stories. So if you are interested, I do have the DMs on monitor. So you can follow the instructions. Go to True Health Live's Instagram at True Health Live, TrueHealthLive. And you can DM us or you can email truehealthlive@gmail.com and I will send you the link. We're not no longer putting links in the posts because that invites some undesirable people sometimes. I've had some experiences. You didn't see them, but I did. So if you are interested in coming on and sharing your postpartum story, you can, follow those directions on the True Health Live IG. And we'll bring you in and you can, take a few minutes to share your story and we'll just talk about it. Or if you know me personally, you can just text me. So for our two moms on the panel today, we actually have three moms, but Alia couldn't join us today, and she'll be back at the end of this month. So I'm gonna turn it over to you, ladies, because this is your expertise. This is your field. So let's talk about like some of the postpartum issues. I think when people hear postpartum, like the first thing, especially for someone who has not had children, I think, oh, postpartum depression. But it really is a word that encompasses everything that happens post birth, post pregnancy. So what are some of your experiences, whether it has been, I think on the first show we touched on like things like lactation and latching on and things like that, what it does to your body afterwards, the physical things and sensations that you feel. So let's get into it. Let's talk about some of those things. Who wants to go first?
I would love to jump in first. Greetings and great day. Um, I, when we think of postpartum, unfortunately, I think that many go straight to challenges. But that's not the perspective that I want to open with because postpartum it means exactly what you just said, Sister Deidre. It is everything after delivery. So I really wanted to open up with postpartum self care and just how important it is for us to recognize, that your body is coming back to, well, as actually, it's not going back to anything. It's kind of entering into a whole nother phase, right? It's probably never going back to what it was, which isn't necessarily a bad thing either. And so a part of that experience, and I had a really, really phenomenal elder in my workplace when I had my first child, my daughter, who actually gifted me during my office baby shower at the time. Everything that she gifted me were things for me. Not at all, and it surprised me. I was kind of like, oh, okay, nothing for the baby. And she came to me after, and actually, it was written in the card. You're important as well. And my daughter is 11, and I still remember that card on that day because it helped to affirm that, yes, the baby will come and everyone will be focused on her. But I have these products that are just for me. So I think that I wanted to just share that as number one, you are important as well. And self care is paramount to being a phenomenal parent and being able to, from a grounded and holistic perspective to be able to care for your youngster, your new baby. So well, I guess we'll kind of bat back and forth. So I'll go with that one for now.
I guess we were on the same page, Precious, because I love that you started the conversation off in that way. Well, I was a young mom, so when I had my daughter, all the things were new for me. But I do recall, like Deidre, what you said about postpartum, and everyone says depression. I mentioned that after I gave birth to my daughter to one of the nurses, and she was like, "No, don't think that way." But I repeated what a cousin had told me, and I was asking, "What is that? Like, am I going to go through that and whatnot?" She was like, "No, not everyone goes through postpartum depression and so forth." Thankfully, I did not. But the self-care piece, as Precious was talking about, is immensely important. Taking care of yourself. I mean, me personally, I was drained of my energy, like I had mentioned before. I was pushing incorrectly. But just taking care of yourself, having a strong support system, though, really does make a world of a difference. If I was by myself, I don't know what I would have done. But I had my family there to help me, like my sister, my mom, my daughter's dad, friends. One of my girlfriends actually lived in the apartment downstairs. And so she was upstairs, back and forth helping. But having them there allowed me to also focus on myself and getting well. So being able, if the baby's crying, like I said, she didn't latch on. So I was feeding her with the bottle, like my mom would feed her so I could take a shower. And that those simple things meant a lot. Just being able to, and I ended up actually getting sick after I gave birth because she wasn't breastfeeding. I got a fever and all kinds of sort of stuff. So I had no taste buds. So it was very hard to eat. Luckily, because my mom was there and her dad was there, they were able to help me with her so I can kind of try to get myself together. But that self care piece is very important. The simple things of being able to take a shower or just like having some alone time. It's very hard to do. When a newborn is there, especially when working hours switch with you and the other parent or whoever your support system is. There were that lasted with the whole support part maybe a good week or two. My mom took that time off to make sure she was there all the time. But when she had to go back to work, it was all me. and hence why I rolled the bassinet into the bathroom when I would take a shower. So it changes. There are levels, and you really have to be very intentional about putting yourself as a priority, just as well as your child. Because if you're not well, you can't function at your full capacity to be present and to really do as much as you can because you're going to be drained. And I think that this all sounds good. We say it because now these are the after parts, right? Like my daughter's 16, so I talk in a different way than I would have been able to talk back when I was like 20. But we live and we learn, and so for the next go around, my thought process is a lot different on how to really focus in on being a mommy and taking care of that baby, but also taking care of self along the way and not forgetting that I too need some rest and I too need to take a moment. Um, so yes, I'll end there for now.
Yeah,
It's
and you touched on
interesting. Oh, go ahead.
lactation. Oh, okay. You touched on lactation, and I wanted to
Go ahead.
just share that being able to get into those showers and take, to when you can soak in the tub is a part of allowing your body to relax so that the milk ducts can be filled. Being able to sit down and have the appropriate teas. I know for me, fenugreek was an herb or tea that I used regularly to help support the production of milk. Um, but you have to make that time, right? So that becomes the challenge. You want to do these things and give these things to this new human that you're responsible for, right? But you can't forget about the old human. And it's funny also, Anushka, that we're kind of covering the spread because you were in your early 20s and I was in my mid 30s when I had my first child. So it's like a very, I would imagine, based on like looking at a lot of my friends that had children earlier and my family, it's a very different experience. I'm like one of the only people that I know that were in their mid to late 30s by the time they finished having children. But I think that it helped me appreciate how important I was in the process, you know? Yeah.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Khadija, were you going to?
Teacher, did you want to share something as well?
No, I don't have any kids.
That
I'm like,
you,
what did you say? Willingly, y'all willing one day. But
so
like the only thing that I can share is like, well, this is what I heard, and things like that. And so it's always interesting to hear from moms. And it's like sometimes I feel like I'm gonna grab a notebook. I'm like, like, yeah, yeah. But the truth is, it's like whatever whatever your experience is going to be it's going to be that, because our bodies are all different, right?
right.
We all have different family histories and things like that. Like when it comes to PPD, postpartum depression, I was reading, like 1 in 7 women, will, succumb to postpartum depression. And some of the risk factors are like if you have a family history of mental illness, if, sometimes having children like either really, really young or in either what they call geriatric pregnancies.
Hmm.
So, those are some risk factors. There's others like support systems and things like that. I would imagine that the support part is a big part of it, right? But then it's like, how are we thinking about what support should look like? Should it be you surrounded by women in your community, or do people think like, oh, it should be my husband, right? Because when we're thinking about like families, you know and sustaining them, like we can't just stop necessarily like working, because most people are in situations where it's like, I have to go to work to make income. Not everybody necessarily has the type of job where they can take leave in that way, or for like that extended amount of time. They, if they don't work, they don't get paid. So how do we think about what that dynamic of support looks like? So those have been some things like coming through my head. Like maybe it's cool to have the women in your community surrounding you, and you have all that feminine energy. It's great to
Hmm.
have dad. At the same time, it's great to have like experienced moms
Hmm.
around, to kind of guide you through the process. So I thought that would be cool too.
I want to say, like, support system is, the saying, it takes a village, and a village, it encompasses everybody. So your support system can be all of the above. It could be your family members, it could be women, it could be dad, it could be your friends. You know what I mean? It really does take a village, and that is a diverse group. It doesn't just have to be, I think it goes to what your preference is, and sometimes not even your preference, is who's there that wants to be there, who wants to support. Because we don't get to necessarily choose the support. We may choose people that we want around us, and at the end of the day, it may not turn out as we thought it would turn out to be. And people who we didn't even think of will show up for you. And so your village, or your support system, you can try to tailor it as best as you can. And kudos if you have the ability to do that, and people stick with that. But sometimes you got to go through the process and see who's going to be there and whatnot. And really, like, you just have to set your standards and your boundaries. But I think for me, like Precious now, having a second child is going to be in my late 30s, so the experience is going to be a lot different. Who I want around me, I'm more in control of that now, right? So I know what that looks like, where I want to have the baby, how I want to have the baby, like all those choices that I had and didn't realize I do now. And so all that is going to be implemented, of course, with my partner. So it definitely looks, I mean, differently. The conversations are definitely are different. The planning is different, because now there's really a plan in motion. But I think it's a beautiful thing, and these conversations are important to have. Because Deidre, I like that, insert the thing that you said, you hear things, but yeah, of course, insert them in this conversation, because there's things that you probably heard and we don't touch on, but because you mentioned it, we're able to touch on it. Like, oh yeah, that's true. Let's talk about this too. So everything is valuable, from our experiences to what you've come across, or what, questions you may have, because others may have those same questions as well.
Well, then I do have some questions. Maybe this
Yeah.
is the interview to you guys. So,
Shoot. Let it
there,
go.
so like breastfeeding, right? I have, and see, these are all anecdotal because I have not gone to look them up. So you see, you can be like in the field of public health and not know something. We don't know everything. But this is why it's good to deliberate on things, like go find and research, because that's a big part of public health too, like research and then deliberate. Um,
Mhm.
Breastfeeding, and a lot of women, the snapback. So, and maybe that's something that is only for like younger. I don't know, maybe it's something that only younger moms experience, or like, of course, if you have a certain body type, right? But breastfeeding can help the snapback. I remember watching family members breastfeed, and it was like sort of painful. Like you feel it like in your abdomen. I guess like that's in the womb, and it's like kind of contracting and coming back into size. So like, thoughts, ladies, come on, let's share.
What you just said is accurate. There and had I had this question in advance, I would have done some research to give the actual factual, but I'm going to give it from how it felt and what I remember from those mommy books so long ago. Yes, when you are nursing, and I think we might have touched on this in the first maternal health session, but when you are nursing, I'll say when I nursed, uh, their dad would actually said like make fun of me because he said I would like nod off, but into like this deep coma like sleep. But what I didn't realize until I did some research is that once, so, and I'm going to get to snapback because that is connected as well. But nursing helps to release, I don't want to say the wrong hormone. I think it's dopamine. So
Let's
maybe
look it
someone
up.
can
Go ahead.
fact check in. Yes, but it
Fact check.
releases it
Real time.
releases a hormone that, yes, yes, yes. It releases a hormone that actually, like during nursing, not only did my babies fall like deep asleep while still lactating, I would like nod out and just be like slumped over, passed out. So it allows you to relax. That's one. Two, yes, it does. Is it dopamine? Did I get that? Is it?
I think oxytocin.
Okay, then that's it.
Oxytocin.
Okay.
So we'll get into it.
It
You keep
releases some.
going and explain from like what you
Okay,
actually felt, and then we'll go
sure.
into it.
So then I know that it releases something that caused me to relax. It caused baby to not only be satiated because they were eating, but also what I found with my son is that he actually would stimulate the milk ducts. So he was like constantly like boxing my breast while lactating to like bring down more milk. He's still a very much a muncher, even though he's very slim. But the other piece is that yes, when you're nursing, you feel your abdominal muscle, like you feel your uterus, not even the muscles, but your uterus, you feel it contracting. As they're nursing, you feel that pull. It can feel a little tense or intense at times, but it's actually what I guess that snapback is attributed to, right? It's that drawing back in. But if we think about life cycle and when we're living naturally, right? And I don't even want to say organic because then our brains automatically go to food. But what I
Mhm.
mean is that we're living in unison with our bodies and with our environment. What you find is that everything is designed to snap you back, right? So I'm just going to get on my food soapbox for a moment. It's like if what you eat is what you're designed to eat, you really wouldn't have a lot of challenges with maintaining health and vitality. I'm not even going to get into weight, but just health and vitality. So the
Mhm.
same thing goes for your body. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
So
I can't wait to have
it
these
is oxytocin.
experiences. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Deidre.
What'd you say? I said it
I
is oxytocin, like that, like the relaxation. It like causes the uterus to contract and push out the baby. So that's the hormone that's being developed, and it comes from the pituitary gland.
mm,
But I've also like heard, like, the baby being nearby. It is I don't know what the word is, but like it's kind of like the baby knows the milk is there, and your body also knows the baby is there, right? So
Yep.
they're kind of
Yep.
working together. It's like this unseen, right? And it's the
Yep.
unseen. We also know what else is unseen. Those greater powers. So like that unseen power that helps to stimulate the milk, and I'm sure in addition to the boxing, like come on, get some more milk. But that unseen force that creates that relationship between baby and food.
And they smell you. I just want to say that as well. They know when mommy's near. So
they perk up. Well, hopefully, I'll have
Yeah.
stories like this to share next go round, and can
oh,
chime in
okay,
on the
okay.
breastfeeding piece.
So you know what then? I wanted to just double back for a moment to share about community and women. Because I touched on one of the women at that time. And I agree, Anushka, if you're not in a position to be intentional about or be born into right culture and community, it is challenging, and it is
Mhm.
catch as catch can. And sometimes dare I say, even the partner that you've been chosen to have a child with, you're kind of like, this is not what I would have chosen, but life
I know,
happens, right?
right?
So right, so there's all of that, right? But the thing about it is, I think, Deidre, you make a really good point as well. Having a community of women surrounding you who've gone through these experiences is invaluable. And when I had my children, while I didn't have the type of community that we're talking about right now, I did have women, elder women, who stepped up and stepped in. And I wanted to give another kind of shout out to another colleague of mine, an older nurse, a Nigerian nurse. And she was really, really supportive of me throughout my pregnancy. And then my daughter was born, and she traveled to Nigeria, and she brought me back some fabric. No, she wasn't. I was still pregnant. She brought me back some fabric, and she brought in a doll to work, and she taught me how to wrap my baby. And I thought, oh, this is so cool. I'm gonna be so trendy and so Afrocentric, right? Because that's, God, my mind was. I just thought this was gonna be so nice. Let me tell y'all, my daughter was the fussiest little lady and only wanted to be with me. If she wasn't like on my body, she was having a fit. And so the way I was able to get chores done was literally hunching over, getting her on my back, wrapping her up tight as I could get it, wrapping her up. And that's how I got my chores done. And then I would slide her around to the front and nurse her while washing dishes, while vacuuming. So I have all of these pictures of, like, perhaps I'll share one. I have all of these pictures of like my baby just kind of
Wrapped
attached
up.
to me. That was her comfort. The moment I wrapped her up, she would just lay on my back and go to sleep. So yeah. So yeah, there's a lot, even though now at this stage in life, yes, I can't wait for someone in my community to have a baby. It'll be like, yes.
Let me teach you.
Yes,
Right?
and we support you, and we got this, because I think that that's you don't want to be a burden when it's like you said, Anushka, it's that catch as catch can. So you don't ask because
Right.
you really shouldn't need to ask, right? We should know, all right, go take a bath, like go handle yourself, go take some time for yourself. Um, and we, unfortunately, because many of us have to work and have other commitments, you don't get to have that. So I think that is the true benefit to having a community of women. So
Yeah.
yes, I look
I
forward
want
to
to.
babies.
I want to piggyback too on some of that. The the piece where, we were talking about the work, and if we even, some of us don't have the luxury of taking time off outside of the maternity leave and so forth. I was lucky enough to have the support system when I was younger to stay home with my daughter for a year. Now that I'm older and planning on having more children, it's really, I'm very intentional of how I set it up, right? Because I'm like, I don't have that luxury that I had before, but I have my own that I have created. And so being strategic about how do I do this? Because I want to have a year. I want to take a year, and I don't want to feel that pressure like, oh my God, I got to get back to work because I got to make this, that, and third work. So what I started doing, I don't think I mentioned it, but I started working on the month of December. Like, it's a big month for me. So what I started to do was make sure that I'm not working that month. So for 2 years now, I've took vacation. I've worked out my days off around those holidays. So for instance, last year, I think I might have worked 8 days in the month of December. And the year before was the same thing. This year I was trying to do at least just 4 days. But that's just to get my mind and start this trend. So when that time comes, I can know how to handle more, and make things work in my home life. And sometimes we have to take the initiative to do that, to figure things out. If that's what we want to do, and we want to have a year off with our babies, because that first year is very imperative. Some of us can do it, some of us can't. And I think there should be programs or some kind of support or resource to help parents be able to stay home a lot longer with their children, with their newborns, because it's so important. For me personally, I can do the research and try to figure out the programs, but I'm also doing my part on my end. Like, okay, if I can't find anything, if nothing comes up, what am I going to do, right? What is my partner going to do? How do we make this work? Because what I've learned, is, working is good. We need to make the money, but at what cost? And I'm at a stage where it's like, no, these things are way more important. Like, my family life is way more important than me having to trek down to the office and do all these things. At the end of the day, I'm not a brain surgeon. So no one's going to be dying if I don't make it into my office. You know what I mean? So let me do what I need to do for mine. Because at the end of the day, that org is going to replace me if need be, but my family cannot. So I think we have to keep it in mind that if you want something, you have to go and get it, right? So if you want to stay home with your child longer than what they give you for maternity leave, then you have to do the work way before and try to set yourself up in a manner that you're going to be able to take that time. And then I wanted to just mention about the teas. You were so right, Precious, because I'm from a Caribbean background as well. And so I don't know what kind of teas it was, but it was teas coming left and right. And some of them weren't so tasteful, but hey, I didn't have any taste buds anyway. No sense of taste. So I was just like chugging them. It's just going to help. But it does, believe it or not, it does help. And those good old natural remedies definitely help. And I'm so happy that you had, these women, these elders in your corner, because I had some too. But here's the difference, though. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just Guyanese women or Caribbean women, but all of them talk to you at one time. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. Wait. And sometimes it can be contradicting. So for me, before I even gave birth, I was saying to my mom, I said, Ma, could you please tell everybody, like, I don't want all of this stuff coming at me. That's going to be the last thing on my mind. And because I would get phone calls or they'd tell my mom. And then my mom was also one of those women too. So I'm like, we're going to do certain things, but we can't do it all, because some things I just don't agree with. And if I didn't agree, then I wasn't doing it. Right. Even some of the, what was it? Hold on a second. Even some of the traditional, well, not so traditional, but like what do you call it? I forgot the word. But those things where you can't come in the house after a certain period of time. Someone told me my daughter's, yes, superstitions. Well, someone told me my daughter's dad couldn't see her until 3 months. And I was like, yeah, that's not going to work. He's not going to, So I loved the fact that I had that, but then it also overwhelmed me because everyone had different perspectives and different advice. And it was like I had to really choose what I wanted to do, and be very clear. Like, I appreciate all this advice, but I have to do things my way as well, and I have to live and learn. And I was already a little non-traditional anyhow, so I said I got to do what's best for us. And but I appreciate everything that you're saying, and I appreciate everything you're giving. But I got to do this, right? So I
Yeah.
just want to say that, like, because our support system can be so different, and they mean well, but it can be overwhelming.
Yeah. I think, it's interesting you talk about the 3 months because and I think what you do is really, it leans on what culture you follow, because there are some cultures where 3 months is the standard, because there's but it's a piece of a larger, way of movement, right? And so, oh no, did we lose you? I think your camera went off. Well, I think you can still hear. You're still here, but the camera went off. But I'll keep going. So, like, the 3 months is a larger piece of something, is a piece of something larger. And, like, in some cultures, in Hebrew cultures, the woman is considered, when there's issue, and issue meaning blood or fluid coming from the body, the woman is considered unclean, and not from like, ew, you dirty, but like it's also a sacred time, so we should be separated, from, um the household, everyone else, that time is, when you are, it's your sacred time. So, and then, there's a piece of like childbirth that also goes with that, because there are like fluids and issue coming from the body. And so there's like, I don't want to say math, but maybe it is math, like the amount of time that the man has to spend apart, or the woman has to spend apart from the man. And so I think, and we'll probably do something on this, on ALGM, but, there's amount of time that you have to spend apart, depending on whether on the gender of the baby, whether you have a boy or a girl. And 3 months, I feel like, sounds about right, if I'm not mistaken, because I feel like we looked this up, and we can maybe even have a show about that later or whatever. But, for some people, it doesn't come from nowhere, right? So it's interesting because you're talking about Caribbean cultures, right? But when we think about Caribbean people, and like how people ended up from the east over here in the west, and transatlantic slave trades, and even before then, how people navigated the world, because people were traveling before Magellan. I'll just say it like that. Melanated people. Okay, so, these traditions come with them. Their practices, their culture, and their way of life comes with them. So when we hear about these things, and yes, I use the word superstition, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's old pieces of culture that traveled and maybe lost some of the interpretations and meanings down the line and along the way. So, like,
Mhm.
it's actually, the 3 months is actually not from nowhere. So I just wanted to put
Yeah, no, and I agree,
You know
but
what? That was right on time.
sorry. No, I agree with Deidre. I was just heard my daughter's dad. He was born here. His family's from the South, right? So
that.
culturally, this is not what they're used to. So I wanted to be fair. And again, like you said, sometimes the traditions came, but like the explanation kind of fell apart, giving the content of like what this is, why we practice it. And my mom is Hindu, my dad is Christian. And so in my household, we had two different religions, different things. And so for my mom, she was big in her religion. And so when my daughter was born, she called up the priest. It is called a pundit in Hinduism. And they opened the book, which is the holy book, and like astrology would tell you like, well, this is the day she was born, this is the time, and that dictated all the things that needed to happen, for everything to be prosperous and everyone to be in good health, myself and my daughter, especially her. And so I was just like, okay, well, let's not do too much, because if this is not his culture and he's not used to this, I understand it, but I don't even practice the religion. I took after my dad and practice Christianity. So, but for my mom to respect her perspective, I allowed her to do that. But I had to say, we won't be able to do everything. So we have to keep that in mind. And by you even inquiring, does that put us in jeopardy in any type of way? You know what I mean? So that's why I had to really draw back from all the things that I was being told I had to do and all this other stuff, because I had to set boundaries as well. And our daughter, I didn't want her to be caught in the middle. And then I'm like, I didn't want to take anything also away from her dad, because this is his moment as well, So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, you know,
Yeah.
we still take the other parent into consideration, and that's where we have to like. This is where it gets difficult, right? Like, and this is how I'm speaking, like what I would want from my household to make sure that we're all on like one accord, so you don't have to feel torn, right?
Mhm.
I'm sorry, Precious. Go ahead. You were gonna say something.
Oh, no, no, this is good. This is good. It's like my thoughts are like coming out of y'all's mouths. That's pretty cool. Um, yeah, hmm, I wrote a few things down. So it's like the idea of culture, right? Or sometimes when we have different cultures or cross cultures coming together, what you described, Anishka, and even what I experience, and pretty much the majority, right, of us, particularly here in America, this is what we experience because we don't have a footing in what culture really is, right? So we get together and it's like, well, my family does this and your family does that. And sometimes it's not as, as clearly varied, right? Like your her dad being from down south and you having your family's background. Sometimes it's New York, out in Brooklyn, and you're in the Bronx, and we just do things differently, and our families do things differently, based on being Northerners and Southern or whatever. Um, but the key I think is being intentional, because when you're being intentional, then it's like, okay, this is like something I'm sure you're planning, because I could hear that a baby's a coming in the next year or so. um but and I'm sure what you're doing is planning, like you spoke about your how you're planning your time to make sure that you can create pockets of time. But also I'm sure you're discussing these sort of cultural decisions with your partner, which is as close as one can get if you're not entering into union with someone who you share a culture with. So I think it's all really, really important to have younger women consider, right? Consider the value of being mated, consider the value of knowing this is how we do things. And just to kind of dovetail back to the idea of that sacred time, and the separation from a man during the time of postpartum. That's another reason why it's so valuable to have the elder women around in those cultures, in Hebrew cultures and other cultures where that is abided
Yeah.
by, because that is your support system at that time. And so obviously it can't just be women who are going to be giving you divergent information, right? Their information has to
Do
be
this.
on
Don't
one
do that.
accord. Right, right, right. It's like, no, don't go on the cot. No, you can't take a bath. No, you can't take a bath. No, you can't go outside. Yes, you can. They have had to
Hide from
either
the sun.
lived it or
You know.
understand. Right, right, right. Either they should have lived it or have come to an agreement that this is how we should have lived it, right? So let's encourage you to have the opportunity to actually walk that walk, so that when your daughter comes into this like understanding, they'll know, ain't no question, no,
Mhm.
dad, you will not be there for 3 months. And this is the reason why. And this is why it's designed that way. Or he'll actually already know that, right? Because he would have come up in that culture. So that idea of having the opportunity to take a season to regenerate, which is what happens every 3 months, right? Even from, you were talking about mathematics, teacher, but that's that life cycle, right? That's the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. It comes in those threes, right? That's why most number systems it ends at the nine, because
Mhm.
that's three cycles, and then you come back around again. um so yeah, I just, there's some things, and it's interesting. We spoke so much about postpartum and really didn't get into depression at all. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. What I want to say is, much like many, as someone who's been in behavioral health for almost 20 years now, there's lots of data that supports that while our food and our air quality and our water quality and our environment degrades, so does our mental health. So I want to acknowledge that. I also want to acknowledge that we also know that people of color in particular are misdiagnosed and overdiagnosed and kind of generalized very, very often. So while I won't touch on postpartum depression, I do want to touch on and encourage women to research mommy blues, because sometimes you're experiencing changes in your hormones and shifts. And when you're experiencing those while you're gestating, you're not told that you're depressed. You're not told that you have some sort of psychosis. It's like, oh yeah, you're hormonal because you're pregnant, and this is a part of the beauty, right? There's a glow, and then there's also pregnancy brain. And there's no clinical, at least I'm not familiar with like a clinical diagnosis, but things just are going out the brain because you've got other things that you're thinking about. The same can be said for simply understanding mommy blues and recognizing that everything doesn't lead to postpartum depression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do they also call it baby blues? Like, so for those, because sometimes
Yes,
different names for everything, and
that's it.
like, so somebody will hear mommy blues and be like, oh, wait, what's that? So it's like, just for
And it
like
might
folks.
be baby blues. I may have to look it up. I might be saying the wrong one.
Yeah, but I mean, but it's happening to the mom, so why can't we call it mommy blues? But it could be baby blues as well. And it's just it's like, I think it's like you said, it's like the hormonal fluctuations following childbirth, but it's not necessarily PPD, postpartum depression. So those are also things to understand, because people will maybe experience, women I should say, will experience these things post childbirth and be like, I suffered from postpartum depression, but really it could have just been like you were figuring out like your hormonal levels. And you can chat with your doctor, doula, midwife, about a lot of those things. So yeah.
Also,
And
I
it
wanted to.
is baby blues.
Oh, it's
Pardon
Oh,
baby
you
me.
blues. I'm like, is also baby blues the same thing?
said. I wanted to add something too, because as moms, we set this expectation of ourselves, no matter what stage we're in, that we got to get it done. We got to. It's all about the baby, and we often just put ourselves on the back burner. And I think we touched on this before, but to the new moms, right? For me, I just want to say this: like, don't overwork yourself. Don't set these expectations and put additional pressures on yourself, because then you're going to deplete, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to burn yourself out. And quite often I see this happening, even to myself speaking. Even though I was younger, it was like, no, it's all about the baby. I have to get up and I have to do this and I have to, and I literally put myself last. I try to balance it. It can be hard. Everything is not this, we're having a conversation, but our children are older. So we have learned along the way. And we have passed that stage, but there are women who are in this stage, in this present moment. And I just wanted to open this piece to say that, give yourself some grace. You can't do it all at the same time. You're still just one person. And we all like to say we're superwoman. But honestly, I can't wait to strip myself of that S. I don't want to be superwoman or super mom. I want to be mom or woman. That's it. And I had to really learn to give myself grace to say, I'm a mother, but I'm also a woman. I'm also Anushka, and give myself time to focus on some self-care and do all I can for my baby, but also not be scared to ask for some help. And being from the Caribbean, being a West Indian woman, we're very prideful, and no one wants to ask for help because you don't want to seem like you're less than, or you can't do something. And sometimes that's all in our head, or we've been raised to say, well, don't ask me till you do it because people are going to say yada yada yada. That's not always true, right? Sometimes we have to say that's not true, and ask. You'd be surprised of the folks that really do want to be there for you, but because you're not opening up, they don't know, and they want to respect the boundaries, right? They want to respect your decision, so they're not going to push. But in all reality, you're like, I wish I could get some help. And again, you're too prideful to ask. So don't overwhelm yourself unnecessarily. Try to embrace your village, embrace your support system, and be realistic. about the expectations that you set on yourselves, and your partners as well, to work together and to and work out a way where both parents are there to pick up where the other one lacks, or to give one a break. And if you have a larger support system, infiltrate all of that into it as well.
Yeah. It's interesting. You said, when we talk about giving grace, it's never good to operate at a deficit, right? Because
Right.
you're a danger to yourself and you're a danger to those who you're trying to help. It's like the idea of poverty. It's never good to operate from, that space, and yeah, when you're operating sometimes like at a deficit, like, it's like survival mode comes out, which is like really primal, and that's what keeps us alive, right? But it keeps you, then what are you creating with yourself? Then that becomes long term, that you pass on. Like, you're always operating from this stress, mindset. I gotta get here, gotta get, it's never from a place of it gets to the point where it's never from a place of planning, and this is how we do things, so that you're not stressed. It's like, this is my way of life. But moving from this, like, oh my God, I got to get done, I got to survive, that's never a good thing to have in long term, because that's us operating from that stress. And when you constantly are operating from that stress mode, it can shut down your body,
Mhm.
because it body thinks it's sick. So then it plays with your immune system. It could go even into like your brain function. So it's just never good to operate from that deficit and then set the body into stress mode.
I don't want to lose this thought. I want to just chime into that. Um, some of and sometimes some of us don't have an option but to stay on that mentality. I got to get this done.
True.
I got to get that done. It's like it's no other option but that, and that is fine if that's where the stage you're at in your life. However, nothing lasts forever, and so you may be at that point right now where it's I got to get this done. I got to get it. There is nobody else. If I don't do it, it don't get done. If I don't take care of this child, they will not be taken care of. If we don't survive, if I don't make it, then we cannot survive. That does not last forever. And so even though you might be in a stage in life that way, you have to always think bigger and think of the bigger picture. Like that's been something that I always say, there's always a bigger picture, and the grass, and there's always a better side of everything. And really, you have to put things in perspective and tell yourself that on a daily basis while you're hustling and grinding and doing all these things, because you want to be able to, when the time does change and that season has passed, to then be able to say, okay, I can I gotta shift a little, right? Just like, and think about it, if you're a mom, especially as your child grows, your mentality changes, because you can't, if they're going from being infants to toddlers and adolescents and so forth, we change and we develop with them, because now we have to suit the way we raise them has to change and how they grow. So we're not still going to treat them like infants at the age of 10, because that doesn't make sense, right? We can't support them accordingly. Same thing for us. If we're sitting here like I got to do this and I got to do that, understand that that does not last forever. And when it comes time to change, be able to embrace that. And at that point, give yourself the grace to say, you know what? I don't have to hustle and bustle like this. I don't have to overwhelm myself. I now have the ability and the capacity to be a little bit more at ease, and then and change as things change in my life, as circumstances change. um Sometimes we get too caught up with the busyness and the I got to do this, I got to do that, that we have now embraced that to an extent where it's so hard to break out of it. And people take pride in that, in saying, I'm exhausted, I'm overworked, and I'll sleep when I die. No, that's not what life is about. Life is about living, making memories, enjoying it. Yes, we want to work to stay alive, but we don't want to work and let that be our grand scheme of things. That's not the purpose. The purpose is work so you can build a life and you can have comfortability and so forth. But you want to enjoy your friends, your family, your loved ones. You want to enjoy yourself. And so we have to be open to that. But like I said, some of us have to do it. At one point in my life, I was that person. Um, and I kept telling myself, there's a better day. There's a better day. This is not going to last forever. Like, being down and out is not going to be forever. And now I think about those days and I'm like, whew, like I remember, you know, and I just posted it on my social media. Like I'm so grateful for the troubles and the worries I no longer have, because that was a stage and I had to go through that and I had to be that for myself and my daughter. But now I'm able to have some, you know, some of that peeled back. But I had to be open to changing the way my mind frame worked as well. So I just wanted
Yeah.
to add that.
Yeah. I get caught on that
Yeah.
mode constantly. Like, you know, like I'm going. At the Yet the truth is, like, we should have the same amount of time that we put out for work. We should have an equal amount of time for play or rest and relaxation. Like, you know, because balance is everything. So, you know, that same ideal should be pushed toward, or should be, you know, kind of utilized. That same concept should be utilized when we're talking about like postpartum. Because I don't want to like stick on the mental health part, you know, even though it is a big deal, like because it happens to a lot of women. But I do want to just kind of like push forward to other things, like, and also just side note, this is the episode where, you know, we do invite people. I just want to say it again, inviting people to come on live if you are interested. You know, DM True Health Live. I've been checking, so that's why I'm like looking down and up and all around. DM or send an email and I'll get you the link so you can come and share your story, or you can text me if you know me personally. You can just send me a text message. So I'm just keeping a lookout for folks who are coming on and want to share. But in the meantime, and don't think that you have to, like, you know, oh, I have to talk about what you're talking about now. Share whatever your story is. But we talked about lactation. We kind of pushed through like parts of like hormonal changes and how that leads to like mental health issues, postpartum or postpartum depression. But there's other things, you know. What about, and maybe I don't think these things are disgusting to talk about, but I do recognize that it could be like really personal. So we can make it as objective as we can instead of subjective. But I was always curious about like the return of menses post pregnancy, because you know, you'll, as women, will get used to not having the period. As women who have been pregnant will get used to not having your period for, you know, how 40, 30, 38 to 40 weeks or whatever. So then what happens afterwards? Like, how soon does the menses return? Like this, you know, for women who are new mothers or currently pregnant and like kind of looking for that information. What can you share with that? If you want to be subjective, that's totally fine. But you know, we can be
Yeah.
like very like, well, this is what I want
Well,
to tell people, like, you know, we want to do like the true story of what happened to you know, but we can be objective.
yeah. We can make it really objective. And I think we'll start by um, it's been a minute, right? 8 and 11, and I know for Anushka 16. But I think I think that the reality is actually the inverse of your question, right? It is how long does it take before the menses ends? So, and it's not really menses; it's just, you know, the clearing out, right? So as soon as you have, whether you have a vaginal delivery or a cesarean section, um, you will be experiencing your menses from that moment. And then usually that's for about the 4 to 6 week period before you go back to, or time frame, just to not mix up words, time frame before you go, you know, and have your next checkup, right? No, well, not even your cycle. So it's kind of like that's like the clearing out of your womb, right? Space postpartum. And then from there, the question is how long before you get back into your normal cycle. I don't remember, but my gut is telling me it's that 3 month period before things get back into the cycle of whatever your new flow will be, right? So that's the way I recall it. And I'm almost remembering that because of the really gigantic pillow like size um, pads that they give you in the hospital. I can still, it's like, what is this, a pillow? I mean, I have that, like, you come to and, you know, you're not fully out of it, but you're kind of out of it. And it's like, what is this thing? Could no one give me my proper products out of my bag? Um, But yeah, that's how that goes. And correct me if I'm wrong, if you remember differently, Anushka. That part of my brain is kind of old now.
No, I'm like, yeah, I don't remember. One thing I remember, for one, my cycle has always been out of loop, always. So I was just like, this is normal. But no, the I bled for about like the 4 to 6 weeks, but then I didn't get my cycle back till a year, almost a year later. And I was so nervous about that. I'm like, what's happening? What's going on? Even though I knew my cycle was a little wacky, but I went to my OBGYN and I'm like, it hasn't come. What's going on? Like, is everything all right? So he did a thorough checkup. I was fine. He gave me something to bring it down. And it just came down. But I think everyone is different. The body is so different, and so really it depends on your history, right? On your medical history, what's going on with you prior to being pregnant, prior to giving birth. And I think I had shared this because before I got pregnant, I had cysts in my ovaries, and I also my pap had came back abnormal, and I ended up like I got the results say maybe a week or two prior to finding out I was pregnant. And my doctor was like, well, okay, we don't want to do any kind of like biopsies and things like that because you're pregnant. So I waited. He told me, he advised me to wait till after I gave birth. But once I gave birth and I went for my 6 week checkup, there was no cysts in my system. My pap came back normal. And ever since, nothing. So my daughter literally was like, she came for a purpose, more than one actually. But I haven't had, any cysts, and I had my paps have been normal since I gave birth. And then also, even though with the period, and the cycle just being off, it took me a while. Even like when I got older, it was still a little off. Now it's fine. But I guess that's just my body. And there was no real explanation, no matter how many questions I asked. I even went to other doctors to get other opinions. And they were like, yeah, you're fine. Everything's good. But your cycle is just a little off. And it happens. They had put me on birth control, but I don't like that. I don't like the birth control and all the side effects and things like that. I just didn't want to be on it. So I just stopped using that because that's what would regulate the cycles for me to get them normal. But then there's all these other things that I was facing, and I just decided, no, this is not for me. But really, I think it's teaches his own, and you have to really, just have these conversations with your physicians about your own personal body and your personal medical history. What could cause this and what could cause that? Is it anything to be worried about? And don't be afraid to get second opinions, third opinions if need be. You just never know, because what one doctor misses, another may not, and another one may even find, you just never know. And I always believe, like, people run to doctors and say like, well, this is it, they know everything. No, they're human too. And so they're trained, but they can miss something, or maybe another one has a different technique and can figure something out, or knows of something. You just never know. So it doesn't hurt to have multiple opinions, and until you figure things out.
Yeah. Human
Something
error.
keeps coming to mind, and I'm sorry, Sister Teacher. Something keeps
That's
the idea of listening to your body, right? And I wrote it down, and I'm like, I didn't say it for a while, and I realized why. So, listen to your body means that you actually have ears to hear what your body's communicating. So before we can even say something like, well, listen to your body, right? I know, Anushka, you spoke to um, seasons, right? And knowing when to shift, right? Knowing that this season will end. But I think so many of us get stuck in the routine of, I got to do it. I got to do it. I have to have that S on my chest, which, yeah, I think that is problematic for most of us. And our body shows that in time. Um, that before you can even listen to your body, you have to actually get to know thyself. And
Hmm.
then you can appreciate what's being said and how you can move and shift and morph to really allow your body to lead you, because that's not just listening to your body, that's listening to what's going on with your connection to your creator, right? So that's that holistic cycle. But sometimes we get stuck in the body and we don't even understand what's happening there and what the messages are. And what made me think of that is just when you shared, your cycle experience. And of course, I don't know the timing of it, but the fact that you also said you were that gotta get it done woman. And then I thought, wow, how many women are so focused on getting it done that even they're telling their body, we don't have time for this. I ain't got time for a cycle. So we got to get it done. And you begin to turn things off within yourself. And no doctor can tell you that, right? But when
Mm-hmm.
you get that balance that you and Deidre touched on, guess what? It's back because your body's like, oh, finally I can do these things, right? And for
Right?
those of us
Like
who are
I'm
in our
trying to tell
30s,
you.
I've been trying, like, you just ain't listening. Like,
Right, right. That makes so much sense, Precious, because if that's the case, then I guess I just started a few years ago. Because as I said, later on in life, I might have been when I was in my 30s that it started, like when I just turned 30. And it took such a long time. But you're so right. You're like that I love that point. That we're so on the go that we turn things off. And it makes you really think like, wow, because that goes to show like when we're stressed, how we move, and like if we consume things that are bad for us, how it's a trickle down effect, right? So if we're always hustling and bustling on the move, we're telling our bodies, no, don't do this, but it needs to do this, right? And you're right, like you have to be one with self. You have to be able to sit still and be centered in order to know what your body's saying. Because if you're so busy and so on the move, when do you have time to listen? You don't. You probably don't listen to people, so you're not gonna listen to to a higher being because your mind is so like on the move. Your body is going along with that, and so that was a very legit point.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I was gonna say something about like, shutting your body off. Um, but it literally just like ran away from my mind. But it's like I'll go back to what you said, Anushka, like with your daughter coming from a purpose. Yeah, she was kind of like, all right, come with me, guys. You don't belong here anymore. I'm here, and
Hmm.
all of that, probably flushed out with the cleansing, right, with the wound cleaning itself,
Hmm.
and because your body's going through hormonal changes when you're pregnant too, so all of those things may have shifted what was happening. And oh, what I was gonna say was when people are involved, or when there's always error is sometimes inevitable. Is We're not gonna be, no one is exempt from human error. So like when you were talking about like getting second, third, and fourth opinion if you have to, or it's the truth. And then I went into thinking like as you're listening to the doctors and like what they have to say, and you made the decision to come off the birth control. Question for you, because now I want to go back to all of the remedies, right, to the elders, to the elder women who were like all corralling, like telling you like this is what you should do, and the baby's coming, and the baby's here. Did you go back to any of those teas? So now I'm gonna move into like from like finding that balance between modern medicine and alternative medicine, which is really
Hmm.
like the homeopathic, the natural remedies and things that do work.
Hmm.
Let's be maybe it can't, you can't drink a tea and all of a sudden a gaping hole closed. No, you need
Right.
modern medicine for that. But for
Hmm.
some things, a lot more than we think, the natural medicine and natural remedies are effective. So like
Hmm.
question, did you go back to any of those bitter teas? Because as you were talking, I was thinking like, oh well, red clover, because sometimes that helps with stimulating like estrogen. So like, a lot of times like in the natural medicine field, women who are going through menopause, like, it's because the estrogen levels are depleting. So the red clover helps to like boost estrogen levels and things like
Hmm.
that. So, but that also means that, for women who are not in menopause, it could be a little detrimental, if you take it in too high of content or levels, but it will also kind of help do things with the menses as well. So like
Hmm.
if to maybe stop or bring it on, like depending, but you have to like know like your body and also know like the chemistry, because chemistry is involved. You have to know, or alchemy. You have to know, the science behind those things and the amount that you need. So that was just a question, not the science part, but like, about the tea and stuff.
Yeah. Well, I never stopped drinking teas because it's just part of our culture. Like either in the morning or at night, it was tea and some biscuits or tea and bread, right? So I always had, but that was just like regular tea that I could stand. When I stopped, my mom would have teas from Guyana, like roots and things like that, and she would make them for me, or she'd give me some, and I'll like boil them. They weren't very good. I didn't put sugar, but I said I chugged it. I'm like, well, it's gonna help. So I just chugged it. And some things I think is mind over matter. Like it may not be so great, but it's like take it. You either take this or you're gonna face these problems. And so for me, I was just like, all right, I'll hold my breath and drink it or whatever the case might be. But I still had to do what I had to do because I wasn't taking the Western medicine. And what really pushed me to stop as well, my cousin ended up having a tumor from birth control, and it was life or death. And she was young. She's older than I am, but she was still young at the time. And I was just like, oh my goodness. And they were like, yeah, it traced back to the birth control. So that right there solidified, like, okay, yeah, no, we're not going to do this at all. So I did shift, and I still practice some of the holistic remedies and things like that. The teas, the garlic stuff, all the West Indian stuff that I grew up on. And then my partner, his family is from Haiti. So his mom has introduced me to some other kind of teas and other kind of remedies, and him himself. So I just incorporate that with the things that I know. And I'm like, all right, we good. We're good. So like if we're not feeling well, I'm like, I go to this one tea that when I wasn't feeling well a few months ago, on a good day, it was bad. But because I didn't have any taste and I was just so totally sick, I drank it like it was nothing. But it helped me so much. And we joke about it now. We're like, okay, we got to get this tea. Be like, but all right, if you have a little cold or something, the tea's right there. Go boil it and drink it. So it's just like, some things you may not like. It may, discomfort because you are the taste. But if you want it to hit naturally, you want to get a natural medicine, then yeah, you got to do what you got to do. And if you're a person that, like we've been talking about this whole episode, you got to do what you got to do type of person, and then that's one thing you got to do, right? So you just add it on. It shouldn't be that hard. But yeah, I did go back to some of the natural things that my mom or like some of the aunties had mentioned to me. I said, well, this is better. It's safer in my opinion. And so I rather do this than to do the other things.
Yeah. I remember like in my 50s, I had like an issue, and the gyno decided, okay, well, take these birth controls for this amount of time. And I was not on birth control, and they were like, oh, do this. And of course I'm like, okay, I'll do it, but I'm not good at regimens, as I've shared with some of my sisters. It's like, it's just like, I don't even like this. I was like, and it's kind of like, I can't do this. Like, what side effects are going to happen? But I also, I didn't come up using or knowing about natural remedies. That just wasn't something that I was brought up around. And I had to learn that later in life. And, now I'm like, regular, like, she like decides to like make a surprise, like maybe a few days early. She's like, I don't want to be at the end of the month anymore. Let's be at the top of the month.
That was like me. And
you're not supposed to be here right now. But every month, like clockwork. So and I think I had to come into that, like, my body was like, listen, we got to turn on. You can't be, doing your thing on the run all the time. You have so you sit down, and I'm going to do what I need to do.
Right. And you know what? Also, I had to be on birth control at a very young age because my cycle was so out of whack. Like I wouldn't get my period. So to regulate it, they would put me on birth control, and that helped regulate it. But when I finally took that break from it, I felt so much better. I was like, I didn't need this. And like I said, my period started coming normally because I slowed down, because I wasn't like moving and taking on so much. So I think the stress and the pressures also contributed to the period being like, not coming on time or coming whenever it did or coming multiple times. That was scary for me. Like, why am I getting it multiple times a month? Like, this wasn't, it wasn't, I wasn't used to it. But yeah, getting off of it was a good decision for myself.
I think the idea of, and we touched on it before, but homeopathy versus allopathic medicine, right? And the balance, how important that balance is something that every person, not just women, but every person who will hear this podcast or see this video, really, really think about it. Because, Anushka, I too experienced at a really young, in my 20s, all sorts of very interesting medical advice. And you have to be thankful for those elders who go to the bush, because they'll vehemently disagree and tell you, no, all you need is XYZ. Did I listen? Not always, not mostly, because I thought the doctor knew best until my body said, ain't no way, ain't no
Mhm.
way. Just to kind of bring it back to maternal health, I remember, and I believe I've already shared, I've had challenges with fibroids since my early 20s. And I remember being in my graduate program, and my OB, an older European, cigarette smoking, like you could smell the cigarettes on him, tall, raspy. He was the epitome of you're the expert, right? Textbook. Um, he looks, he says, you better either, and he didn't say poop, he said the S word, or get off the pot, because you're not going to have your womb for very long. And I just thought, that's not true. Like, I'm not going to have children at 22 just because you tell me this. But then I remember being in my 30s, pregnant with my daughter, and having one of my first mammograms, sonograms. And the first tech gets another tech, the other tech gets someone else. And then they start giving me medical advice and telling me how high risk my pregnancy would be because of these tumors that I had. And I'm like, no, I'm trusting that this is going to happen perfectly.
Mhm.
And while my daughter didn't like sweep everything out with her, as you experienced, Anushka, yeah, I was actually in position to have a vaginal delivery, and my OB's thing was, your daughter just moved everything that was in the way out of the way to clear a path for herself. And till this day, when she like
Right.
frustrates me, that's her nature. Like, I'm gonna find a way to get this done. Like, if mommy said she's not doing it, I'm gonna see if grandma can help me do it. She's like, so could you assist me with this? Because mommy, and I'm like, yeah, that's that fighter. Like, I can't even be mad at it, because
Mhm.
that's that problem solver in her. Um, but yeah, just the idea of allopathic versus homeopathy, right? Just how you can create a balance in your own journey. I don't want to. Yes, I use herbs all the time, but I'm not an herbalist. So I don't want to give any or offer anything. But definitely research for yourself, and talk to your elders, because no matter what your background is, I'm pretty sure if you're a person of color in particular, and for many that just have other roots, you have indigenous knowledge. Know someone in your bloodline knows how to use what's around you. So you have to
Mhm.
go. This was a really phenomenal discussion. This is
And
good.
like you said, Precious, on the last piece, someone around you knows how to use what's around us. We do that back home. I always have this conversation. It always comes up like, well, how do people survive back in Guyana? Because they ain't got no medicine like this, right? They don't have the technology, none of that. Even to this present day, I'm like, we get sick when we come up here. We deal with all that stuff when we come up here. Because I think about my grandparents and their parents, and I'm like, these people were having babies. Like, these women are having babies with no epidural, no medication, right? Natural. Getting, if they had to have a C-section, all this stuff was being sewed back up with no, nothing to numb them or anything like that. Even like, all these other different issues that we deal with. So it's like it can be done because it's been proven from the past and present, and it's probably going to continue because there are countries that are not as advanced as the US and all these other big, countries as China and so forth. And the people are surviving, they're healthy, they have nutritional um, nutrition around them in their natural foods and the way they're planting and harvesting. People's hair is growing luxurious, natural shine, right? We don't have to put all these chemicals in it. So it can be done, and it's being done in other lands. So it's like maybe instead of trying to get others to adapt to us here in the States or in Western, we need to adapt to theirs and take in consideration what others are doing in the natural way. So we can have less of all these issues happening here. But you're so right, because people are looking around them and making things work with the natural products we have straight from the earth. And so it can be done.
Yeah. Go ahead. I was gonna say there was one other thing I wanted to talk about before we depart.
But this was right. This was really good. We have so much more to talk about.
Yes.
Well, okay. So like maybe we can close it off with like, what about healing, right? Because and that's whether you've had vaginal or C-section. And I think the two of you both share like Anushka, you had vaginal, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you had C-section. So
Yes.
maybe we can, talk about like experiences in healing. And again, it's going to be different. Some people will largely experience, similar. But there's always outliers and like little differences that we all experience. But like, what about some of your experiences healing from from both of those methods, birthing methods, both vaginally and through cesarean?
So I'll go first just because the C-section healing process is so much longer.
Mm,
And I don't I want to say maybe more painful. I'm not really sure because I don't have a frame of reference, right, of vaginal
Mm-hmm.
delivery. Um, but in comparing my first delivery to my second, some of the things that any woman, and I would say any woman who is preparing for delivery should have is a gosh, I don't remember. I'm going to call it a belly band because I don't remember the formal name, but it was a band. It's a stretchy elastic band. It's medical grade. When you have a C-section, if you have it in, sometimes it's given to you, but you should purchase your own. Um, these belly bands, you pretty much wrap your belly, right, literally the moment I was in my bed in my room, I laid the band down, and it has Velcro, and you pretty much just tighten it to your stomach. This helps, one, to pull everything back in. Two, the pressure lessens the pain for me substantially. I think I shared that I kept my children in the room with me, and so it allowed me to kind of get up and move around because that area was held tight and
yeah.
secure. My OB also agreed that it helps with the healing process as well. Of course, with a C-section, you do have dissolvable sutures, and so that area needs to stay clean and dry. And so keeping that pressure on it, just it's covered over, but that helps a lot. Uh, Healing. I think that's like the first thing that comes to mind. Another more cosmetic thing is finding products that work or creating your own products that work to keep the area clean, like and clear from infection. So like things like aloe, um, uh, eucalypt. I don't like giving like my things because they're really just for you. But I mean, you can research the benefits. This is how I'll frame it. You can research the benefits of aloe, eucalyptus oil, as far as what purpose it serves as far as cleaning and cleansing. Of course, we all know things like peroxide. But I would also advise to steer clear of things like Neosporin, unless you truly understand what's in it. But if you do, then you'll also recognize that there are more natural alternatives. Yeah, so I just wanted to get that out there. And there's some really great companies that have great belly band supports. Yeah.
Mhm. I'll co-sign the aloe though. Like I don't think anybody would like, bark against the aloe. Like it
Right.
does wonders for the skin. Period. Okay. Like
Yeah.
how
And
they say
castor
now,
oil.
but
Oh,
it's
castor oil. That's the other one. Castor oil
mhm.
is phenomenal. It's one of the few oils that actually knit from the outside in. So it literally, you can, well, I'm sure people know you can take it if you experience constipation and things like
Mhm.
that. But it
Yeah.
also is very curative from the outside. So keeping your belly, I'm rubbing mine. You can't see the hand motion. Keeping it slathered in castor oil is not a bad thing. And of course, you can use an essential oil if you want to not have it smell like sulfur, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And there is castor oil that you can ingest, like, similar to black seed oil. I think you
Mhm.
can ingest it. So like as we know, things work better from the inside than the outside. So like, it's always great to like find that balance between like putting the topical and a topical remedy on, but also finding the method of ingestion if it's something that can be ingested. Not everything can be ingested, but definitely there are ingestible forms of like black seed and castor oil.
Yes.
I won't endorse, but you can go to plenty of places that advertise, holistic food. And you can go there and they have it, or you can go on these amazing websites that have these things you can order.
That's very true. For myself, for the healing process, uh, I ended up getting 3 incisions because my daughter would have ripped me if she just came out that way. And to me, that stands out more. I still to this day hear the slit. I'm like, oh my God. But it
Wait,
wasn't the
oh, you
Episiotomy.
mean you can hear them when they cut, then when they in it?
yes, that just was amplified in my head. And to this day, I don't know. It's still trauma. The memory is just traumatic in ways. I was like, oh my God. But anyhow, that healed pretty well because it was the dissolvable stitches and sutures and whatnot. What happened though was those big, the net underwears they give you with the big pads, the pillow pads. I had to have that on. Even when I came home. But I ended up catching a UTI for the first time in my life. And that was terrible for me. So that just like the healing process after giving birth for me was a little harsh because I've never had a UTI. I didn't know what that was. It was so painful to just urinate. It was painful across the board. So that was my biggest challenge. And when I told the doctor, and it was just this one pill, like this pill that he gave me, and it worked, the antibiotics, but I didn't see him until I think maybe 2 weeks after. So I was dealing with that for and I might be wrong, maybe it was a week, but I was dealing with that the whole time. I literally was crying every time I had to use the bathroom, and I was like, oh my God. However, the nurses had gave me this wipe that eases the pain down there. And so I would just sit over the toilet with the pad, the wipe just on there just to give me some relief because it was painful with the UTI. But after I got the antibiotics that I needed, it healed up very, very well. Of course, I was still, bleeding and whatnot, but I moved. I kept myself moving so I could heal better. I didn't want to just stay put, on the bed, from the bed, the baby, wash up, and that's it. So I would walk around the house in circles if I needed to just stay a little bit active. I try to like still do little things around the house as far as like, making tea and, things like that without straining myself in any way or overdoing things. But the healing process overall, it wasn't too bad minus the UTI process and getting that cleared up. But afterwards, I was okay. I was all right.
I wanted to give one more thing that came to mind when you were sharing about the your episiotomy experience,
Mhm.
and that is just in general. We all recognize when you go into you have a cut and you go into the ocean or the seawater, what happens? It is healed and clean, and you know everything is right in the world. And so I wanted to just give a nod to sitz baths, salt water, warm
Mhm.
water, and salt is so important as far as supporting postpartum healing, prepartum healing. Like it's just really really important that you the simple things, right? Saline is abundant in the hospital systems, and it's because that simple salt water, um, research what it does for your body, internally and externally. And of course, I can't say
Yeah.
salt water without coconut water. So that's it for my healing things.
And what about like so for people like you said, some salt is like usually abundant in the house. So should somebody go and like grab the Mortons off the table and just like go to town in the
No,
bathtub, or is Epsom salt better?
Epsom
I'm just
salt
I'm
is,
I'm
thank
just
you. No, Epsom salt is ideal. But again, I didn't even research. That's why it's important, take our words, but don't just blindly take our words, right?
Mhm.
Research for yourself
yeah.
what it means, because there's black salt, there's Himalayan salt, there's pink salt,
Yes.
there's sea salt, there's
Oh,
Epsom salt, and they each have, like, if you're doing a sitz bath, you may not want to use Epsom salt. You may want to use sea salt. You may want to use Himalayan salt, but you need to do that work on your own, right? And come up
yeah.
with what works best for you. But thank you. No, I don't think you ever want to use Morton's salt. Not even in your food, but that's a whole nother.
Oh, one thing
Girl, right. You're
I forgot to mention, like
right.
Precious with the belly band. Well, this was more, I guess, for a snapback, because this is what the elders had mentioned. You always want to tie your belly up after you give birth. So that was practically also for healing, and that's something I had to do. I was just, like I said, I was worn out from delivering, so that just irked my soul having to put it on. I did for a few days, and then I was like, listen, it is what it is. Okay, I'm not going to torture myself, because I don't care about snapping back right now. I just want to feel comfortable, right? So I tried it, and I was like, all right. My mom was like, but you're gonna, I don't care, we'll work it when we get there, we'll deal with it, but right now I don't want any parts of it. But yeah, that's part of it. That's what's in my culture too. What we're told to do, we have to wrap your belly, so so you don't get fat. Or it also helps to heal. But the thing that was emphasized for me wasn't the healing, which I wish they would have mentioned more. It was the healing component of it, but it was more about the snapback. And I was, like I said, I was just like, all right, I'm over this. No, I was too uncomfortable, and it was those tight. They were like tight, and I was
Very
just like, how
tight.
can I tend to the baby when I'm in such discomfort? And I was like, all right, Ma, this is not gonna work. She was like, all right, fine, that's fine, because I'm gonna take it off anyway. But yeah, that was
And
the other thing.
yeah, that's where perspective is so important, right? Now,
Hmm.
if it been for healing and you understood all of, even what that discomfort meant, because that was me on the opposite side. I knew the
Hmm.
discomfort was me being supported,
Hmm.
so it was like, oh, this is good. Like, yeah, it's tight, and yeah, it's a little bit rigid, but it wasn't for any sort of snapback, right? It was
Hmm.
because I know this is how I needed to kind of support my seed of creation, my womb space.
Right.
So but we have to connect with those elders and get that information.
Hmm.
And then research. We can access so much now, so that we know why it really is. Yeah, it might be snapback is 10%, 20%, but what's that other 80, 90?
Right. Right.
But this was good. My children
That's
are
why.
gonna get me. They were supposed to be doing something else at 12:15, so I'm surprised they're not
No.
banging
We're like,
down my door. But they
But
know
that's it.
today's live day.
Yeah. Well, we are ending, but I just wanted to make sure we ended the conversation with the most important piece, which is like, how do you heal, start the healing process. And it is more than just the physical part, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is, how you, and if you do need to heal emotionally, it all starts in how you prepped and how the pregnancy was spent, right? So, but
Mm-hmm.
those are definitely that need to be acknowledged, addressed, and discussed. So, like, even though this show was, for postpartum experiences, we're still going to be talking about maternal health all summer. So I'm sure some of them will come back up. If folks have comments, definitely put them in the chat and we'll get to you as we can and answer. So just a quick recap. This was about postpartum experiences. And interestingly enough, I was like chatting and texting with a friend and she's like, oh, but I didn't have any postpartum experiences like all through the show. And I'm like, no, just come on, it's fine, it's great. You know, Postpartum is not just about depression. It is everything that happens post birth. So, that's another thing. This is why it's True Health Live. We have to make sure that we are making distinctions, right, between what we think, kind of as group think, because of how words are used. So when people hear postpartum, they immediately think, oh, depression. It's everything that happens post birth. That's why they have to add the word depression, because it's depression after birth. So we talked about lactation, everything that happens, like latching on, what happens in that process, the womb, the uterus contracting, like, which is part of the snapback, contracting to go back, and the releasing of oxytocin, to help relax mommy and baby, stimulating milk, all of these things and processes that go on within the body are important for postpartum. And that's what we're talking about. And also we did talk about the mental health issues that some women face, and going into postpartum depression. 1 in 7 women will experience more serious, mental health issues, which is considered the postpartum depression. So if that's the case, there are different avenues that you can take. You can, definitely make sure you reach out to your doctor or midwife or nurse or some medical professional so that you can get the support that you need. And then we also moved into the pain or healing after certain types of, well, there's only two. It's cesarean. Not like you can't come anywhere else. Cesarean or vaginal birth. There's no other place for baby to come out. So I don't even know. Not a lot of options. And then I feel like there was something else. Did I miss something? We did cover something. Oh, periods. The return
Mm-hmm.
of the menses after pregnancy, or the cleaning out of the womb, and like how the experience of the cycle returning, right? And so these things are always going to be, they're going to be varying stories from woman to woman. So definitely make sure you share your comments in the chat. Not the chat, because the chat will be off because it's no longer live after we're done. But share your comments in the comment section, and we'll definitely make sure to dialogue with you. Or you can, put a comment in any of the posts on social media. As always, if you want to hear about a topic, or you're interested in some series you want us to cover, definitely make sure to reach out at truehealthlive@gmail.com. You can send a DM to any one of the social media platforms. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Or you can, leave a message in the comments. And we'll, of course, I'll repeat this all again in the closing when this airs on our podcast. You can also catch True Health Live on YouTube. We're live every other Sunday on YouTube. And we are also a audio version podcast for those of you who are on the go, right? You can catch us on your major podcasting stations. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Anushka and Precious, for being so open, and sharing your stories. We wish we could have got some live stories, but people are a little bit scared. That's okay. So there'll be other opportunities for people to come on and join, and share their experiences. So give thanks, everyone. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you again on August 22nd. We're talking about advocacy in, not advocacy, health disparities, when it comes to maternal health and reproductive health. So join us in 2 weeks on August 22nd. Peace, everyone. Bye.
Peace.
Bye. Take care.